My sister specially made a child-free wedding so that she wouldn't invite 17-year-old me. 10 years later, I planned my child-free wedding, and she's furious because I don't want to see her 3 unruly sons. So I asked the guards. I was 5 years old when I first understood that my sister, Emily, hated me, not disliked, not found annoying, actual hatred. It was a strange realization for a child, understanding that someone who shares your blood could look at you with such cold detachment. Emily was 10 years older, already a teenager when I was still learning to tie my shoes. You'd think having such an age gap would make her protective of me, maybe even maternal. It didn't. For reasons I've never fully understood, she resented me from day one. My earliest memories are colored by her hostility. My parents both worked long hours at their accounting firm, so they often left Emily in charge of watching me. Just for a few hours, they'd say, kissing me goodbye while I tried not to show my fear. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, Emily's fake smile would drop. "Time for bed, Sarah," she'd say. Even if it was only 6:00 p.m. But it's still light outside, I'd protest weakly. "Don't care. Go to your room." She'd march me upstairs, push me into my bedroom, and then came the sound I still hear in my nightmares, the distinct click of the lock from the outside. My room would transform from a safe haven into a prison cell. Emily had convinced my parents to keep the outside lock for my safety when I was a toddler. Now it was her weapon. "Emily, please let me out," I'd call, my small fists barely making a sound against the wooden door. Shh," she'd hiss from the hallway. "You need to be quiet, Sarah. You know what happens to noisy little girls, right? The monsters under the bed get hungry." I'd freeze, my heart pounding. "There's no monsters," I'd whisper, trying to convince myself more than her. "Oh no, what's that scratching sound then?" "I think one's waking up." She'd scratch her fingernails against the bottom of my door, and I'd leap onto my bed, pulling my feet up, convinced that something was about to grab my ankles. I'd sit there for hours, too terrified to move, too afraid to even reach for the light switch. When I'd hear my parents' car in the driveway, Emily would quickly unlock my door and whisper, "If you tell them, I'll make it worse next time. They won't believe you anyway." But once, when I was about 6, I did tell them. My parents had returned to find me pale and trembling, with tear tracks dried on my cheeks. Emily locked me in my room again and said, "There were monsters under the bed," I said, my voice shaking. My father's brow furrowed, but before he could speak, Emily rolled her eyes dramatically. "There she goes again with her stories. Remember last week when she said she saw a dragon in the backyard? That had been a game. I was playing, and Emily knew it, but my parents nodded, exchanging knowing glances. "Sarah," my father said firmly, "you shouldn't make up stories about your sister. She gives up her time to watch you, and you should be grateful." Grateful. That word became a splinter in my heart, festering for years afterward. How could I be grateful for torment, for fear, for the growing certainty that in my own home, my word meant nothing against hers? The pattern continued for 2 more years. Emily babysitting me, locked away, and the monsters under the bed growing more elaborate in her telling. Sometimes they had claws that could reach through mattresses. Other times they could climb walls and ceilings when the lights went out. When Emily graduated high school and announced she was going to college in Michigan, 5 states away, I pretended to be sad for my parents' sake. But inside, I felt a balloon of relief expanding in my chest. Freedom, safety, the possibility of a normal childhood. The day she left, I watched from the window as my parents hugged her goodbye, and in the driveway, when the car finally disappeared down the street, I walked to my room and lay down on the floor, deliberately putting my arm under the bed. Nothing grabbed me. No monsters lurked in the shadows. The only monster had driven away, and I had 4 whole years before I'd have to see her again. Those years were the best of my childhood. Without Emily's constant presence, my parents and I grew closer. They weren't just working automatons who dropped in to feed me between shifts. They became real people with laughter and stories and weekend plans that included me. Mom taught me to bake her famous chocolate chip cookies. Dad took me fishing and didn't even mind baiting my hook. We had movie nights and board game competitions. It was like finally being allowed into the family I'd been orbiting for years. But the shadow of Emily's return loomed over each holiday break and summer vacation. She'd arrive with designer bags and stories about her sophisticated college life, bringing expensive gifts for our parents, a cashmere scarf for Mom, a leather wallet for Dad. For me? Nothing. Not even a candy bar or a pencil from her university bookstore. The first time it happened, at Christmas when I was 9, I couldn't hide my hurt as I watched Mom and Dad unwrap their presents while my hands remained empty. "Where's Sarah's gift?" Mom asked, noticing my expression. Emily waved dismissively. "She's just a kid. She doesn't need expensive stuff. I'll get her something from the gas station on the way home if it's that big a deal." But she never did, and the next holiday, it was the same pattern, and the next. Eventually, I stopped expecting anything and learned to make myself scarce when she visited. High school was a refuge from the family drama. I wasn't popular, but I had good friends, decent grades, and teachers who appreciated my quiet focus. By 17, I had college applications ready, a part-time job at the local bookstore, and a future that seemed refreshingly Emily-free. Then came the announcement. "Your sister's getting married in March," Mom said one night over dinner, her face glowing with excitement. "Isn't that wonderful?" "Great," I nodded, calculating in my head that would be during my spring break of senior year. I didn't love the idea of spending my vacation at Emily's wedding, but maybe it would be a chance to finally be included as an adult family member. Maybe I'd even be a bridesmaid. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. 2 weeks later, Emily swept into our house with a diamond ring and her fiancé in tow. David seemed nice enough, quiet, well-dressed, with a polite smile that never quite reached his eyes. Perfect match for my sister, I thought uncharitably. "We're planning an intimate ceremony," Emily announced over dinner. "Actually, we've decided to have a child-free wedding." The table went quiet. Dad cleared his throat. "Child-free? But it's just family. David and I want a sophisticated atmosphere, no distractions," Emily said, her eyes fixed on me. "No one under 18. I stared back, the meaning crystal clear. "I'm 17. I'll be 18 in 4 months. Rules are rules, Sarah. I'm sure you understand." I looked to my parents for support. Mom was studying her plate. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "It's Emily's wedding," he finally said. "She gets to decide how she wants it." "Exactly," Emily said triumphantly. "Besides, someone needs to watch the house while everyone's gone." I felt like I'd been slapped. They were all going, my parents, relatives from both sides, family friends, everyone except me, left behind like an unwanted pet. After dinner, I retreated to my room, fuming. I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. Part of me wasn't even surprised. This was classic Emily, finding the perfect way to exclude me while looking completely reasonable to everyone else. The day of the wedding, I stood in the driveway, watching my parents drive away in their formal clothes, feeling hollow. For the next 8 hours, I wandered the empty house, flipping through TV channels and trying not to think about what was happening at the Lakeside Hotel. That evening, when my parents returned, they were full of stories, the beautiful flowers, the touching vows, the delicious food. I nodded and smiled in all the right places, playing the role of the interested daughter. 3 days later, scrolling through social media, I saw it. Emily had posted her wedding album. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of me. There, in the family photos, stood my cousin, Sophie, grinning in a pretty blue dress. Sophie, who was exactly 1 month younger than me. I zoomed in on the photo, thinking I must be mistaken, but no, it was definitely Sophie. My hands shook as I dialed her number. "Oh, yeah," she said casually. "Emily said the age thing was just a guideline, not a strict rule." "Didn't you know?" I hung up without responding. The betrayal burned in my throat. It wasn't about having a child-free wedding. It was about excluding me specifically, and everyone, including my parents, had gone along with it. That moment changed something fundamental in me. I stopped trying to earn Emily's approval or my parents' understanding. I focused on graduating, getting scholarships, and planning my escape to college. The next time I saw Emily was at Thanksgiving, 6 months later. I was freshly 18 and heading to State University in January. She made small talk about married life, and I responded with polite disinterest. The elephant in the room, her wedding deception, went unmentioned. My college years flew by. I studied marketing, made friends who knew nothing about my family dynamics, and gradually built a life that was entirely my own. I came home for major holidays but kept my visits brief. Emily appeared intermittently, usually when she wanted something from our parents. Then came the baby announcements. First James, then Oliver, and finally, Liam, 3 boys in 6 years. Emily quit her job to become a full-time mom, and suddenly, our parents' house became her unofficial daycare center. I had graduated by then and landed a job as a junior manager at Reynolds Trading. My apartment was 15 minutes from my parents, but light years from the chaos that now defined their home. Every time I visited, there was evidence of my nephew's destruction: stained carpets, broken picture frames, crayon on walls. I tried to time my visits for when Emily and her kids weren't there, but sometimes our paths crossed. The boys would run wild, screaming and throwing toys, while Emily scrolled through her phone, oblivious. When I tried to suggest that maybe they should use indoor voices or not jump on the antique coffee table, Emily would snap, "Don't tell my kids what to do," so I didn't. Instead, I started avoiding family gatherings altogether. Until the phone calls began. "Sarah, honey, could you come over tomorrow?" Mom's voice had that particular tone, exhausted but trying to sound cheerful. "We could use some help cleaning up." Emily just picked up the boys, and the first time, I went without complaint. I spent 4 hours helping my parents restore order. The second time, I gritted my teeth but still went. The third time, something in me snapped. "Mom, why are you always calling me to clean up after Emily's kids? Why isn't she doing it?" There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, sweetie." "You're right. We shouldn't have asked." I hung up, feeling guilty but resolute. That evening, I called Emily directly. "You need to stop treating Mom and Dad's house like a dumping ground," I said without preamble. "They're in their 60s. They shouldn't be cleaning up after your kids." "Mind your own business, Sarah," she replied coldly. "This is between me and them. They're my parents too, and you're taking advantage of them. I'm raising 3 children." "What would you know about that?" Her voice dripped with condescension. "Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong." The line went dead. I called my parents immediately after hanging up with Emily. My hands were shaking with anger, but my voice was steady. "Mom, Dad, I want you to stop babysitting for Emily unless she agrees to clean up after her kids. Those boys are completely out of control, and Emily doesn't lift a finger." There was a long silence. Then Dad cleared his throat. "We'll talk to her." I wasn't sure they would, but a week later, I got a furious call from Emily. "What the hell did you say to Mom and Dad?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "They told me I can't bring the kids over unless I clean up afterward." "Good," I said simply. "You had no right to turn them against me." "Who's going to watch my kids now? Do you know how expensive childcare is?" "Not my problem. You chose to have them. Take some responsibility." She hung up on me again. I later heard from Mom that Emily did start cleaning up after her visits, not thoroughly, but enough that my parents weren't left with a disaster zone. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. For once, I hadn't backed down. Life went on. I focused on my career, working my way up to senior manager. I dated casually, but nothing serious stuck until I met Noah at a work conference. He was smart, funny, and refreshingly straightforward. No games, no manipulation. After years of walking on eggshells with my family, his honesty was like oxygen. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on my 27th birthday with a simple solitaire ring and a promise of a drama-free future. I said yes immediately. But even as we celebrated, a dark thought intruded. The wedding would mean facing Emily again. We could elope, Noah suggested when I explained my concerns. Vegas, just us. But I shook my head. I won't let her rob me of a proper wedding. I want my friends there, your family, everyone except my nephews. Noah raised an eyebrow. Bold move. Your sister won't like that. I know, I took a deep breath, but after seeing what her kids did to my parents' anniversary party last month, the cake smashing, the screaming during the toasts, I can't risk it. So I made the announcement on social media. We're thrilled to be planning our wedding for next June. Note, this will be a child-free event. No guests under 16, please. We love your little ones but want everyone to enjoy an adult evening. Most responses were positive. Friends with children promised to arrange sitters. Noah's family completely understood. My post received likes, hearts, and supportive comments, all except from Emily. A week later, I went to my parents for our usual Saturday dinner. Walking through the front door, I heard the familiar chaos before I saw it. Shrieks, thumps, something breakable crashing to the floor. Emily and her boys had happened to stop by. James, now 12, ran past me with a water gun. 8-year-old Oliver was jumping from the sofa to the love seat, his shoes leaving dirt marks on the upholstery. Liam, the youngest at 6, was systematically pulling books off the shelves and dropping them on the floor. Emily sat at the dining table with Mom, calmly sipping coffee as if surrounded by perfect tranquility. Halfway through dinner, Emily casually mentioned my wedding. I'll need to know the exact schedule so I can plan around the boys' activities. I put down my fork. The boys aren't invited. It's adults only, as I mentioned in my post. She laughed. That doesn't apply to family, obviously. It applies to everyone. No exceptions. But I can't leave them for a whole day. I'll have to bring them. I stared at her, wondering if she was really this oblivious or just testing me. No, you won't. You'll need to find a sitter. There's no one I trust with them for that long. They're coming with me. Her tone was final, as if the matter was settled. Emily, I said slowly, let me be clear. If you show up with your children, you won't be allowed in. It's my wedding. My rules. You're just doing this to get back at me, she snapped, her composed facade cracking. Because I didn't let you come to my wedding. I blinked in surprise. What? That was 10 years ago. This has nothing to do with that. Liar. You've always been vindictive, always making up stories about me. I gestured to where Oliver was now using the curtains as a climbing rope. This is why your kids aren't invited. They're completely out of control, and you do nothing about it. Emily stood up so abruptly. Her chair fell backward. Boys, we're leaving. She stormed out, children trailing behind her like destructive ducklings, leaving the usual disaster in their wake. After they left, my parents gave me disappointed looks. Was that necessary? Mom asked. You could have handled it more diplomatically. Like how? By letting her walk all over me like she always has? No thanks, Dad sighed. They're just children, Sarah. They're family. Look around you, I said, gesturing to the chaos. Do you want this happening during my vows? During our first dance? While everyone's trying to enjoy a meal that Noah and I are paying a fortune for? They didn't have an answer for that. 2 days later, Emily posted a long, self-pitying rant on social media, heartbroken that my own sister is excluding my precious boys from her wedding out of spite. Family should come first, not petty grudges from the past. Instead of responding directly to Emily, I simply commented, to clarify, our child-free policy applies to all guests under 16, not just specific children. We want an elegant evening that all adult guests can enjoy. What I didn't expect was the flood of comments that followed, not from friends but from relatives. Those boys knocked over my grandmother's urn at the family reunion. They pulled the tablecloth off at Thanksgiving and broke all my good china. One of them bit my daughter at the Christmas party. Emily deleted her post within hours. The weeks leading up to my wedding were a blur of final arrangements, dress fittings, and nervous excitement. Emily had gone suspiciously quiet after her social media backfire. No calls, no texts, no more complaints to our parents. The silence made me uneasy. That's when my phone rang. It was Sophie. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice low. "I was talking to Jen yesterday. You know, Emily's friend from college, the one who was her maid of honor? Yeah. According to Jen, Emily is going to have the boys accidentally spill something on your dress during the reception, and James is supposed to push over your wedding cake." Jen felt horrible about it and confided in me. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Even for Emily, this was a new low, not just ignoring my wishes, but actively planning to ruin my wedding day. I told Noah, expecting him to be as shocked as I was. Instead, he was eerily calm. "We'll hire security," he said simply. "Give them pictures of Emily and the boys. No drama, no scene they just don't get in." We hired 2 security guards from a professional firm, gave them photos of Emily and her children, and instructed them politely but firmly not to allow them past the entrance under any circumstances. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect blue skies. As my bridesmaids helped me into my dress, I felt a surprising sense of calm. Whatever happened with Emily, I was marrying the man I loved. That was what mattered. The ceremony was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. At 3:30, my phone buzzed with a text from the head of security. "Subjects have arrived with 3 minors, proceeding as instructed." I took a deep breath and handed my phone to my maid of honor. "Don't tell me anything else about my sister unless the building's on fire." The ceremony was beautiful. Walking down the aisle toward Noah, seeing his face light up in that moment, Emily didn't exist. We exchanged vows under an arch of white roses, and when the minister pronounced us husband and wife, the applause from our guests felt like a release of years of tension. It wasn't until the reception that reality intruded. My mother appeared at my elbow as I greeted guests, her face tight with anger. "How could you?" she hissed. "Your own sister is outside in tears because those goons you hired wouldn't let her in." I kept my smile in place for the benefit of nearby guests. "I made it clear children weren't welcome. She chose to bring them anyway. They're family, Sarah. What do you expect her to do with them?" "The same thing every other parent here did, find a babysitter." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Your father and I are going to take her home." "I hope you're satisfied with yourself." I watched as they slipped out, choosing Emily yet again. It hurt, but less than I expected. Perhaps I'd been preparing for this moment my entire life. The rest of the reception was perfect. Friends danced, relatives shared embarrassing stories, and Noah's grandmother taught everyone a Polish folk dance that had us all laughing until our sides ached. Our cake remained upright. My dress stayed pristine, and no one threw food or climbed the curtains. 2 days after we returned from our honeymoon, I decided to call my parents. I thought they deserved to know why I'd hired security, to understand I wasn't just being vindictive. "Mom, Dad," I said when they answered, "there's something you should know. Emily was planning to have her kids ruin my wedding. Sophie found out from Emily's friend Jen that she was going to have the boys spill something on my dress and knock over the wedding cake." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then my mother's voice, cold and dismissive. "Sarah, I can't believe you're still making up stories about your sister after all these years." "I'm not making it up," I protested. Sophie heard it directly from Jen. "Why would I lie about this?" My father sighed heavily. "You've always had an imagination, Sarah. Always seeing the worst in your sister. This has gone too far." I closed my eyes, transported back to childhood. Emily locking me in my dark room, telling me about monsters, then calling me a liar when I told our parents. "I didn't make it up," I said quietly. "Sophie can confirm it. Sophie's always taken your side," Dad dismissed. "Your sister was very hurt by your actions, and I've been hurt by hers my entire life, but that doesn't seem to matter to any of you." The line went silent for a moment. We should talk about this in person, he finally said. I don't think so, Dad. I'm done explaining myself. I love you and Mom, but I won't apologize for protecting my wedding day from Emily's spite. So that's it? You're just cutting us off? I sighed. No, I'm setting boundaries. When you and Mom are ready to see me as an equal member of this family, not just Emily's annoying little sister who needs to fall in line, I'll be here. That was 6 months ago. Since then, silence. I hear updates through Sophie. Emily still dumps her children on my parents regularly. The boys are still destructive, still disrespectful. My parents are increasingly exhausted, dealing with health issues that make keeping up with 3 unruly children near impossible. But they won't set boundaries with Emily, and I won't pretend everything is okay. Sometimes I dream about reconciliation Sunday dinners, where everyone behaves civilly, holidays without tension, my parents finally seeing the pattern that's been clear to me since childhood. But dreams aren't reality. The reality is that Emily was right about one thing. I was a dreamer as a child. I dreamed of a sister who would protect me instead of terrorize me, parents who would believe me instead of dismiss me, a family where love didn't come with conditions. Now I dream of different things. The family Noah and I might create someday, one where no child feels less valued than another, where words like fair and respect aren't just empty concepts.